Meet Glen Taylor, co-founder of Superyacht Fitness, a company with a mission.
It's about collaborating with really, really good quality, like-minded people that also have a mission to make crew life better.
Join us as we delve into the world of superyacht gyms and onboard fitness and find out if when it comes to crew fitness and everything that means, are we on the same wavelength?
So Glen, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. I'm very honoured. Honoured to be part of your podcast.
Thank you. Whenever I'm around you or someone from the Superyacht Fitness team, I feel like I need to check my fitness app and make sure I've done something that day.
How many steps?
Oh no, I don't want to say. It could be quite embarrassing at this point.
That's not good.
No.
You're in an office. We'll let you off.
I'm going to work in the office. I didn't really find fitness until later in life. No, and it was literally when I started doing office work that I actually started thinking seriously about my fitness. Can I assume for you that fitness has always been a part of your life? Or did that come much later as well?
Yeah, it has always been a part of my life. In fact, I was obsessed as a youngster with sport. And I think there's a big difference between sport and fitness. So fitness, not necessarily. And when I actually look back on my younger years, and I was quite fortunate to be, a fairly talented tennis player.
Okay, I did not know that.
Did you not? I keep it quiet. But I was quite good at tennis. But what I didn't realise at that young age was the relevance of fitness to what could have been a potential career in tennis.
Yeah.
So yes, I did fitness and I played tennis all the time. But what you don't realise is how many components of fitness there really are. And I just didn't, I look back on it and, with two young children now, I think I can really help them to become so much kind of more almost match ready. And, my son's quite good at cricket. He's quite good at football, but he doesn't really understand fitness yet. Although he's just started nagging me to do the bleep test.
Okay.
I don't think he
I felt like that was torture at school. When they came up with those little cones and put them in opposite ends of the playground, I just felt like that was the worst day of the week.
So I do it with him now, and I don't think he thinks it's fun. And obviously, being the supportive dad, I'm like, yeah, it's all right, Finley, we'll go and do that. Deep down, I'm like, this is hell. And I have to beat him. So I have to, how does it you have to beat
You're
him?
not one of those parents who's going to allow their children to win.
No, what does that teach them? What does that teach them? They need to learn the competitive spirit as well. But no, I think, so sport was always a big thing for me. Fitness, less so. And then I think I went through probably 10 years of my life when I started that career. And that's before yachting, where I really didn't focus on fitness.
Okay.
I got quite fat.
Really?
Yeah, I got quite fat. I got quite big or bigger, should I say. And it was then I kind of thought, no, I need to get back into this. And I guess that's, 10, 15 years ago. And just started, I'm sports mad.
Yeah.
You could put a game of tiddlywinks on in front of me and I find a way of making that fun and competitive. So for me, it's now a big part of my life. And obviously since Superyacht Fitness, I don't have an excuse to not be involved in fitness.
So how did Superyacht Fitness come into being? How was it born?
Kind of accidentally, really. So going back a couple of years ago, so I've been in yachting 19 years. In kind of various shapes and forms. I started up a consultancy business about 4 years ago. And through some work I was doing, I was introduced to my business partner who had been working with high net worth individuals, elite sports people for their gyms and their wellness facilities. And he'd been asked to do an 80-odd metre yacht and was put in contact with me as someone that could potentially support just because I know the industry very well. And we just got chatting, and I think two things. One, we realised we're just very aligned in terms of our morals and our attitudes and our ethos on life. But also, we got talking about the gym side, and that was like, yeah, that's fine. We can do some really cool gyms because that's what my business partner does. But there was a real big part of me which was, I'd had a friend of a friend that had committed suicide on a yacht, and I thought, no, there's a much bigger play here, which is about crew.
Yeah.
So, the gym side was kind of almost a bit of there will be overlaps that we will do that, but this is about making crew life better. And that's where it really started. And I think that shocked him, my business partner, when I said that, because most people look from the outside through this, very blurry lens into yachting, and they just hear it's great. Yeah. It's great money, you go to nice places, it's warm.
Yeah. I mean, it's an extraordinary industry, but it comes with all sorts of different stresses with it as well. And I remember when you and I first started talking about fitness and Superyacht Fitness, some people said to me, well, why do yacht crew need fitness? Because, you know, they have a really demanding job, that physically demanding job. Why would they then need sports and things on top of that? And I think that comes from two areas. I think that's A, not understanding what fitness is, and B, not understanding the crew side of it as well. So you said earlier that there's different components of fitness. So what does fitness actually mean?
Yeah, and you know, I think fitness is almost in the eye of the beholder in some ways, like wellness. So you know, wellness is another term that, you know, is almost overused now in yachting. Every man and his dog is getting into wellness. It's like, you've been on yachts? Oh, I'll go into wellness.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, it can be overdone. But fitness is not just about being able to do a 5K run in 25 minutes or whatever it might be. There's so many components. You can be fit to do a job. You can be cardiovascularly fit. You can be, you know, a lot of people actually will say that person, he or she, they're fit. And they're talking about an aesthetic side, right? But someone that looks fit, pretty, you know, gorgeous person might not be fit to do a job. It might not be cardiovascularly fit.
Yeah.
And then there's the huge element of that, which is mentally fit, which to me is in some ways more important than anything. You know, a lot of people, myself included, do physical exercise for my mental fortitude. I know there's two benefits to it. For me, yes, I get fitter, tries to help me keep the weight off, but also I just feel better if I do some exercise. And I know you're the same.
I'm very much the same. I don't think we could put that term on it. I've done one mini triathlon.
You're a triathlete. You are, and more to come.
It is amusing because I didn't actually start running, or I didn't start enjoying running until I was 35. And now it's become such a part of my routine that when I don't run, I know when I haven't run, and I can feel it. And I go on what some of me and my colleagues like to call my rage runs. Where you just get out all of your feelings, all of your emotions when you've had like too many emails in one morning. You just run it out. And it makes me feel so much better. It makes me feel so much more creative and so much more grounded when I come back. But obviously for super yacht crew, during the season, which is kind of their most stressful time, they can't just go for a rage run, as we call them, to get all of their emotions and feelings out. So how are they to stay fit and all those different components of fitness when they're on board?
Yeah, and it's a really good point, right? Because those crew have got multiple challenges that face them, you know, and you're going to have crew that feel rage, like you do, and you know, they also have the overlay of the fact that they're time poor, space poor, quite often inspirationally poor, because they just, you know, they're lacking that inspiration in terms of what can I do. So it's in many ways it's about finding that inspiration. It's about finding what it is that works. Quite often what we hear is we don't have a gym on board, and the question I often, the kind of question I go back to is, what do you class as a gym?
I mean, for me, I've said this to you before, gyms are those really smelly places that I go to.
You don't like gyms, do you?
I like gyms. I do not like gyms. I think they, you know, I've done my time in a gym. I think as a woman, there comes different aspects of going to a gym as well. And I just don't enjoy them. And why are they always so warm and sweaty and smelly?
But that's your take on a gym.
That's
so you
think
think
on a gym
is a place you go, it's smelly, it's sweaty, there's a stigma attached to it. However, for me, on a yacht, a gym could just be an area or it doesn't have to be a fixed area on that vessel. It doesn't have to be a dedicated crew gym or an owner gym. It could just be somewhere in the tender garage. It could be somewhere in a lazarette. It's just somewhere where you have a few tools available to you. So it doesn't have to be a dedicated area. We did an onboarding recently with a client. They had a bit of a leak on board. We went down to the tender garage and we did a great workout with that crew. They loved it. Wasn't where we planned to do it.
Yeah.
But there was really bad weather. And for them, for the purpose of that day, that was the gym.
Yeah.
So it's about being creative. And it's very easy in life, isn't it, to kind of have one reason not to do something. And I often say this at home. I'm like, you just need one reason to do something, not 15 reasons not to do it. And if you say, yeah, but we don't have a gym, so I can't do it. Well, you won't do it. That's ultimately the way it's going to work out. But I think if you say, right, we've got the willpower, we've got the inspiration, we've got a little team of us together, let's go and do this in the tender garage. You know, and one of the things we do as a business is, and it's the bit that I get more excited about, is actually getting a bit creative. Like, we've got this really tight space. I don't think we can do anything with it, but can you help? Yeah, we can. And that's the bit that I probably get more excited about, because you realize you're making a difference to that crew, as opposed to building a gym for an owner where it may never be used.
I really want to know, what's the most creative space that you've used then? Was it that tender garage, or are there other creative spaces that you've seen?
We actually did a yoga class as part of an onboarding up in the I don't even know what you call it, under the foredeck with all the anchors.
Okay.
It's basically like the anchor room. It was freezing cold when we first went in, so we had to leave the door open for a little bit. But again, this is because of the inclement weather that day. So you just have to, again, you have to work with what you've got. So it was lashing it down outside, so we couldn't use any outdoor space. They then had a leak in the tender garage, so we couldn't use that. So we went up to this other space. But again, it was serene, it was calm, the area we warmed up, and they did a brilliant yoga class. So again, it's just about being creative. It really is.
How do you deal with that? Obviously, crew may not all be, say, like myself, when I was younger, should we say, into fitness, into exercise and stuff. What are the conversations and education that you have around that to kind of say, okay, we're not asking you to go and play a game of football, but investing half an hour to do some form of fitness, whether it is yoga, whether it is strength work, with the rest of your crew, has benefits physically and it has benefits mentally as well.
Yeah, I think the thing for me when it comes to trying to get people to do it is community. It's actually trying to build a community and helping each other on that journey. You know, for you to get into that fitness journey when you were younger, there was probably someone that inspired you somewhere. And there might not be an overt person in your mind that took you on that journey, but you know, every part of your history kind of in many ways drives your future. And I think if we can, you know, onboard a yacht, one thing we try and do always is to have a wellness officer on board that yacht, or what we call a chief energy officer, a CEO. And that person really has that responsibility of kind of driving the behavior for that vessel, being the role model, being the person that says, they're going to do something. Because you might find half of that vessel are really pumped up and motivated, and the other half might be feeling flat. And it's about trying to elevate that morale, bring people together. And community is proven to be a massive catalyst for exercise. You know, these days, I don't know whether you put all your runs on Strava, but you know, it is a bit of a kind of a saying, if it's not on Strava, it didn't exist.
I mean, I don't put them on Strava, but they definitely exist.
You haven't done them recently then? You haven't done them? Not enough.
But I mean, yes, it's definitely community, and I run, and we have a group here. You know, we're very lucky at Hill Robinson is that we have a wellness coordinator who sets up our fitness sessions and things for us. Now, would I have done those fitness sessions on my own a couple of years ago? Probably not. But because I got to go with my colleagues, my friends, you know, there's something about having that community and that support of other people there as well to encourage you.
And it's that gamification.
Yeah.
So again, a big part of what we're doing is not just, you know, people often say, oh, the Superyacht Fitness app. It's not just a Superyacht Fitness app. It's not just a training platform. It's an ecosystem in many ways. But a big part of that is that leaderboard.
Yeah.
It's that gamification, you know. And I go back to fantasy football, and it spans across the ages, right? Fantasy football, whether you're 9 years old like my son or myself at 30, it's everyone wants to do fantasy football because there's a leaderboard and you get points, and points mean prizes. And it's the same, you know, if you're a fit person and you do lots of exercise, one thing you want is a pat on the back and someone to say, well done. If you're not a particularly active person, what you need is a motivation to get you on that kind of treadmill of life. So it works across all levels. So I think by having that kind of that gamification, I think that really, really helps. So you need the inspiration to get you going, and you need that person that helps.
Yeah.
But then, you know, you want to make it a habit. And, you know, as my business partner always says to me, you know, activity like this should be like brushing your teeth. It's make it a habit. It really should be a habit.
How can crew create it to be a habit though when, you know, their lives are constantly changing and adapting? You know, you're on board the vessel, you are then on leave, you're on board the vessel when you've got guests on, so it's not the same time frame, you're in a shipyard. How can they make that a habit and have some sort of consistency when actually their environment that they're in is consistently changing?
It's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, a lot of it comes down to willpower and having that reason to do something, not to do something. But I think planning, I think it's being aware of the nuances of yachting. I think lots of clients will say to us, you know, we're on charter for 8 weeks. We won't have time for anything. The reality is with a bit of planning, you will have time. And one thing we don't want to say to crew, never use TikTok, never use Instagram, all of that sort of stuff, because that's the generation, right?
Yeah.
Have fun, live a little. But also it's, instead of spending 45 minutes on TikTok, maybe spend half an hour on TikTok and do a 15-minute cabin workout. And it's just about finding that balance. And I don't know whether you've done it, but occasionally I'll get that daily summary on my iPhone and it'll say how much screen time you've had. And I'm like, oh my God.
I hate that thing.
I don't like that reminder.
No.
And then I go and occasionally I look at it and I'll say, what's this been? And it's probably because partly you've left your phone open, or at least that's what I would justify it with, that the phone's just been left unlocked. But it's about kind of planning ahead. You know, you could have guests on, guests off. You could be at anchor. You could be in a port. You could be on leave. There's a lot of different things that have been going on whilst you're employed. Yeah. They are all going to, you know, you can still have consistency. Consistency doesn't mean doing the same thing every single day. Consistency just means you're having a plan and you're driving good behaviors in many ways. So it's about just being aware. It's just about being aware of the nuances of yachting. We know it's hard. You know, what we don't want to do is say to crew, it's easy, just carve time out. It's really, really tricky. And there is no one solution. You know, we can't just say, yeah, that's what you need to do, because every yacht is different. Every yacht is different. And it's why we also, with our leaderboards, we try not to just reward the person that's done the most, because that could be the person that's got the most time.
Yes.
And then that's quite demotivating for other people. So we often put people into teams and you work it on averages so that you get that kind of that team morale, that team building element to it as well.
Turning slightly towards the clients, I mean, I could be completely wrong in saying this, but I feel like there has been kind of a revolution, especially in the last sort of 10 years, in the number of people who are actually paying attention to their fitness and stepping up. And one would assume then people wanting to have a gym on board their vessel. Are you seeing like an increase in the number of owners who want gyms on board?
Not hugely. I think gyms have always had, you know, in the time we've been doing this, they've always had a place on yachts. Yeah. I think there's definitely a movement towards more functional gyms. And that's music to my ears, because I think historically, you look at the gyms, you look at the top 10 gyms on yachts, and it was the first thing that Tim, my business partner, said when he looked at them. He's like, there's nothing inspiring about them. They look nice. Don't get me wrong. They look nice. And that's, you know, a lot of that's down to the interior design of that vessel and things like that. But actually, when you look at it, it's quite often a couple of treadmills, a cross trainer, a rower, maybe a spin bike, nice row of dumbbells. Yeah. It's very generic. Okay. And it's just laid out nicely. Yeah. So it's about looking at how do we save more space? How do we get that nice aesthetic feel? Because it has to be nice, right? If it's going to be on a £200 million yacht, you're not going to put in a crap looking gym. No. But it's about making it as functional as possible. And gyms these days are going more towards space, creating space so that you've got that room to do, you know, whether it's your meditation, your breath work, your yoga, your Pilates. It's creating that feeling of space. And there's some really good technology now, really, really cool tech that you could do. You know, you could have a huge multi-gym, but actually you can do this on a small cable machine. You could do 300 exercises, for example, on a small cable machine that looks incredible, completely indigenous with the vessel, and you've got loads of space saved. So there's lots you can do. So I think are we seeing more gyms? Not necessarily. I think we're seeing more crew gyms. Okay. But that's very much dependent on the size of the yacht. It's very difficult to curate a crew gym on a 40, 50 meter yacht, because that kind of square footage, that real estate you're giving away on the yacht is so valuable, probably, to the owners.
So what would your advice be then to
Build
build a bigger yacht?
So,
But I mean, that would be one definitely for the client. You know, if you want to have those facilities, you need the bigger space. But would you say to the crew who are on those, 30, 40 meter vessels, what can they do without that access to a gym? Is it a case of, like you're saying, having the right equipment on board and using it in those creative spaces? Or should it be looking for your opportunities outside of the vessel?
it's both. It's both. So I think that's a really good point you've just touched on there. And it goes back to my previous point on planning.
Yeah.
If you know you're going to be in Palma or Nice or Antibes, use us, use the website, whatever it might be, to look at what's in your area. A little bit of planning can go a long way. You might find there's a paddle facility just up the road. You might find there's a great basketball court, an athletics track, invariably a beach. Kind of goes with the territory. But I think there's planning you can do there. But you might not be able to get ashore. We've got clients that, they're at anchor for 5-6 weeks at a time. So at that point, you've got to look at what's on board. And that could be, you might have no crew gym. You might not be able to use the owner gym. What we are seeing is more crew being allowed to use owner facilities.
Okay.
And again, that's very much linked to the behaviours of the owners and guests, right? They might say, no, I don't want you to. Others might say, absolutely, you're welcome to when we're not on board.
Is that a conversation you often have with clients, is to have a conversation with owners where you're saying to them, perhaps you should consider allowing your crew to use these facilities? How do you approach that conversation?
We try. And you know what it's like in this industry. Very often you don't talk to the UBO. That's the problem. You're talking to various levels, and it depends on the confidence of that person to have that discussion with a principal, which then depends on the personality type of that principal. If they think they're just going to get told to, go away, I'm not even entertaining that, they're probably not going to ask the question in the first place. So I think for us, it's about educating and showing the importance. And, a lot of this always comes back to the same old conversation, which I feel is just this, it almost becomes a bit of a vacuum in our industry, but it's retention. How do we keep hold of good people? Well, it's not just money. It's not just rotation. It's looking after them. It's giving them a home away from home. I know it's work, and I know it's hard work, and that the benefits should reflect the hard work you're putting in, but give them a space that they can kind of grow and be inspired, an aspirational area that they can think, actually, once I finish work, I'm looking forward to being able to put my feet up, do a bit of exercise, go in the cinema room, go and play the Xbox, give them those things that can just take them away from the stresses of the day, whatever they were doing. There's so many little things that you can do in confined areas. The value of a skipping rope, for example. You don't need space. You do.
You need a bit of a height.
You need a bit of height. Yeah, we might struggle here, but you don't need huge. That on a deck. You're always going to find an area where you can do skipping. Our own bodies are the best exercise. Body weight exercises.
As someone who cannot lift their own body weight.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that either. But whether it's sit-ups, whether it's press-ups, whether it's planks, there's a lot of stuff that we can do using our own body. Most men, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but most men do not focus on their core.
Okay.
They are terrible. I am one of those men. Terrible when it comes to core. I'm aware of that, so I'm trying to do more and more. But you can do in your cabin. So we've created some cabin workouts which will be coming out. We've created a cabin workout kit which will be coming out. So there's lots of things that we're trying to think, what would a crew member want? It has to be affordable. It has to be space sensitive. But it's about all of it comes back down to the same common denominator, which is what the crew want and what helps them.
I mean, you touched upon there that there is different exercises that speak to men and women. How do you manage that as well? Like, we've spoken about building gyms, but you've mentioned things like paddleboarding, yoga. How do you manage like making sure that everybody on board, no matter what their gender, age might be, that they are going to be able to get that little bit of fitness for themselves?
Yeah, and that's what, and you know, Chloe, that we've recently taken on as our client engagement officer. And she hates that term. Well, she kind of loves it. She hates it because it's also shortened to CEO, which then makes people think.
Which makes people think that she runs the company, yeah?
Quite happy for her to do that as well. But that really is kind of her and her team's responsibility. So we've got a few CEOs now that kind of support with our client needs. And it's about going in there and understanding them. You know, we can do bespoke fitness programs for every crew member on board. But again, that's not really our leading agenda. Because you can do a lot of that online and stuff nowadays. But it is about listening to the crew and giving them a voice. And when we go in and we do the onboarding, it's about what does work for you. And it's about trying to bring them together as much as possible. So you want to make the activities that we're organising or getting involved in as inclusive as possible. Otherwise, if you've got one person that loves paddleboarding and one person that you're not building
a community.
Exactly. And there's no team harmony. But there are often sports like rounders, for example, is a really great sport that brings people together because everyone can play rounders. It's bat and ball, right? It goes back to kind of that, you know, the organic kind of early days. It's just bat and ball. I think paddle is going to become more of that. I mean, it's becoming more prevalent in the UK now. It's a little bit more established in Europe. But I love paddle. And I think it's great for crew.
Absolutely love paddle. And I think that's another thing. When we're talking about Superyacht Fitness, your mind can go towards the gyms. And of course, we see some spectacular gyms on 100, 110 meter vessels. But we also see fitness in another way. It's like we know that there are people basketball courts on their vessels. And I'm hearing about pickleball being on vessels now. You know, I feel like there's a really exciting place that we can be going to when we've now decided that fitness is not just about gym, but it's your overall wellness. You know, it is that gamification. We could be going in a really fantastic creative direction with our vessels now and seeing, you know, there's pop-up picket ports and stuff on board yachts.
And I get so excited about that sort of stuff. Now, you know, it's unfortunate in a way that to have a pickleball court or a paddleball court on a yacht, you do need quite a big yacht.
Yes.
It's going to be hard for someone to say, I've got a 40 metre and I want a paddle court. I mean, that's going to be tricky. Do what we can, but you're going to lose all your VIP rooms. I get so excited when you hear about stuff like that, because that truly is home away from home. You know, and I don't know whether you've heard of it, but Off the Deck.
I have heard of Off the Deck, doing great work.
Yeah, and I love what those guys are doing. You know, we've said from the very start, we love what that's about. The idea, and I'm not even looking at that from a perspective of the owners. I'm looking at that perspective of the crew. Of an evening, you're in Antigua, instead of going down, you know, Admiral's Quay and having a load of drinks and stuff, put your golf simulator on, you know, you watch the sunset go down, you get some pizzas, have a few beers on board, and you have a competition with the crew. And then you do a competition with another yacht that's in the area, and you're actually competing with them on some of the world's greatest golf courses. What a great way to just have fun, team collaboration, a bit of competitive spirit. For me, that's the sort of thing that's cool. You know, we've got loads of ambitions of things to do moving forward in terms of that competitive yacht versus yacht environment, because that's the bit that we really get excited by.
And getting them outside the community, not just on board, but the community within the industry as well. Because like I said, a lot of this comes down to yacht crew retention. And when you can actually get crew to invest in the industry beyond just their yacht and feel like they're part of an even wider community, you know, it makes you want to stay. It makes you want to be part of that industry and be part of that community for a long time.
Massively so. And a lot of crew don't really do that. So they'll drink with their community, you know, when they come into a port, and you'll get various yachts there. But they don't often hang around, and they don't often use other people in that, you know, that mentoring capacity, which I think is also so important. You know, when we're talking about exercise and we're talking about retention, having people that you can talk to and learn from and aspire to be, I think is so important. And it always comes back to that word, Kaylee, it's community. Yeah. It is community. And I know there are lots of communities in the yachting environment. Unfortunately, a lot of them do tend to then go back to drinking
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-drinking at all. I absolutely say, crew, go out and have a drink. So it's important, right? You've got to let your hair down occasionally. You're young, but it's about doing it in balance. I love some of the communities that have been built in Palma recently. The Yachties Run Wild. I think it's brilliant. It's great. You get a bunch of girls. This is Yachties Run Wild, isn't it? It is. You get a load of girls going out running all together, and they'll go and have a bite to eat, smoothie, a drink afterwards. But it's really positive, and they can share stories about their yachts. They can share best practice. But they're going to be naturally happier because they've got those people you can turn to, and you don't realise how important those people are in your life until there's a problem. And there's not many, and I remember saying this to you before, but there's not many jobs you go into where you're completely stripped from your home network. Maybe if you go to the armed forces or something like that, but you go onto a yacht, you could be 22 years old and you don't have a family around you. It's hard to speak to them. When you've got tough days or you're suffering from a bereavement at home, God forbid, or anything like that, it's quite a solitary place to be. So to have that community around you, I think is really, really important and someone to turn to.
And I think this is why I like Superyacht Fitness, is obviously the term Superyacht Fitness, we immediately put our brains to that physical exercise side of it. But it is that total wellness that is within there as well. And I know on the app you've got things about nutrition as well. It's not just about here's your physical exercise, but your mental health as well. It is that all-encompassing side of it. But do you feel like sometimes that, we said that maybe the yachting industry is getting a little bit tired of the term wellness, maybe the term fitness as well? Do you feel like there's a bit of exhaustion around those concepts?
Yeah, there is. There is. And I sometimes feel exhausted, because, and you'll go on to Instagram and say, there's another 15 wellness businesses. And in some ways it's good. And, I never take that as a threat, I think, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, in many ways. But I think it's easy for people just to say, we're in the world of wellness, but in what way? And for us, what we are very much trying to do is to pull this together and create that ecosystem. It's not about me. It's not about Tim. It's about our collaborations. And for us, it's about collaborating with really, really good quality, like-minded people that also have a mission to make crew life better. Because that ultimately feeds back to our pledge. And our pledge is to make 5,000 crew lives better by 2026. It's really ambitious. It is really ambitious. And every day that drives us and makes us hungry to make that difference. And if that's the only legacy we leave, then to me, that's a mission accomplished. Obviously, we have to try and make the business work as well. But that's the conversation Tim and I rarely have, actually, bizarrely, is on the financial side. It's more about make a difference, really, really make a difference. So there is a lot. There's a lot going on out there, but for us, we've got to partner with the right people. People like Emma at Seize the Mind. I love what they do. To me,
Absolutely.
Every single yacht should be talking to people at Emma at Seize the Mind, because to me that should just be almost a core competency for a crew member. And we wouldn't compete with people like that. Why would we go and do something which is already out there that's brilliant? So for us, it's about collaborating and how can we work, really effectively with those sorts of people.
I mean, Emma's mental health first aid training I've done it myself. It's absolutely extraordinary. And she always brings it back to the life of the crew member. And she brings it back to those personal experiences within the super yacht industry. Because that's what binds us all together, is this super yacht industry. It is that those crew who are leading these lives where they are separated from their families, they are away from home a lot, they are, serving others, on a constant basis, completely different sleep schedules and things. And that's where we want to put our investment. Do you think we've kind of gone through like a bit of a revolution of paying attention to crew needs? Or do you think it's just always been there, just in a different way that we've not kind of organised and monetized?
It's a great question. You didn't prepare me for that one. No, I think it actually has been a bit of a revolution, but it depends what you class as a revolution. It's like mental health. Going back 15 years ago, everyone always spoke about mental illness. And I remember back then saying, why do we call it mental illness? It's actually about health. And now everyone on the planet, there's an obsession, right? Mental health. When everyone has a mental health need. I think that demand has always been there for crew wellness. But I think it's come at a time where there was almost an obsession about, with crew leaving yachts to go and they want more money, more and more money, and more rotation. And now you've got really junior crew wanting time for time rotation.
Yeah.
And I think at some point you have to look at other things that are instrumental in a crew member's life. And I think that's where we've got to now but there's that big question of what else?
Yeah.
So if you're looking to work on a yacht, yes, you're going to look at the terms. Yes, you're going to look at whether you're going to get, your flights paid for to go back twice a year and all of that sort of stuff. But does that yacht have a Superyacht Fitness membership? Because if my daughter's going to work on a yacht, I actually want to know that their attitude towards, physical and mental fitness is really positive, and that there is an open door, and it's not just hey, it gets too tough, get off. That's not the environment I would want my daughter to work in. Yeah. So I think it can't just be a tick box exercise. There actually has to be, some meaningful thought behind. I think because some people we talk to are like, yeah, that would be a good thing for us to do because it looks good. That's not what we're about. We don't want people just to look good. We want people to behave properly and actually look after their crew. And that's not me saying that, yachts don't, but I think you've got so many levels of what looking after looks like. Yeah.
And obviously, our knowledge just in general, outside of yachting, of what health and fitness actually is and what it means has developed over time. And now we've come to recognize so many different things that maybe 15, 20 years ago, we didn't recognize was important to health and to fitness. And this is kind of a difficult thing that I speak to many people about and will be heard on the podcast time and time again, is that we have so many different generations of people on board yachts. And we have captains and senior crew members who were around yachting 40 years ago, when we weren't talking about having fitness on board, having community groups, going out for runs. Do we need access to a gym? Might not have even had gyms on board then. And sometimes that can be really difficult to kind of say that is a necessity without it being seen as kind of like a privileged younger generation, being woke. How do you kind of handle that, that conversation with some people, no offense to them, of those generations who maybe do not understand that this is not us trying to be woke, but just take care of crew in a different way, that the expectations are different.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen some of it. It really frustrates me, but you kind of don't know what you don't know, right? And that's the reality. I think it's unusual to find a yacht that is full of those people. So you might have a captain that is very much of that mindset. But invariably, the chief officer, second officer, bosun, whatever it might be on board, are going to be younger and a little bit more in tune with what crew want. So it's about using those guys and helping them to kind of elevate that message to the master on the ship. We had a situation a while ago where actually we went to meet a captain and it stuck with me because it really frustrated me. We were told to go and speak to them, and we got onto the passerelle, spoke to the captain, and he basically said, for want of better words, I haven't really got time for this. The crew don't need this sort of thing, and I'm off for a cigarette. And I just thought everything about that was just, so you've spoken on behalf of your crew that they don't need it. And it wasn't a particularly big vessel. I'm going to say 45 meters. So let's say there's 9-10 crew. It made me think, do you know your crew don't need that? Or are you just saying that because you're that old school mentality? And actually what you've done is prioritize going for a cigarette over talk to me. Now, you could have said to me, come and join me. I'm going for a cigarette. We'll have a chat. And I could have helped him. But it was like, and that's probably the only time we've had that sort of conversation. And I do think the world is changing. Yeah. I think people are more open-minded to it. You see some great behaviours as well. So for every one of those, there's probably 20 yachts that are exhibiting such positive behaviour to doing the right thing for crew. Now, and no one's ever going to get that perfect. No. Because if I'm running a football team and I've got 11 players, my management style might be great for 10 of them, and one of them won't like it. We'll shoot for utopia. Fortunately, you're never going to please everyone.
I know some fantastic captains who have really embraced kind of fitness levels and things on board. Also, our owners are getting younger. You have that under 50 club now of people owning yachts. The fact is, back in the 60s, going for a run for fun was weird. You know, running was something that you saw in professional sport, and that was it. People didn't run for fun. That's not what you did. Okay. And so it's just that fitness and welfare have progressed, and therefore you're having to have different conversations. But now that even the client is getting younger, you know, are those conversations actually going to get easier?
100%, 100%. And you do often see when you've got those younger owners, because they expect the same from their crew as they expect from themselves. Yeah, it goes back to our kind of conversation at the start about fitness. It's about being match ready. Yeah. It's about being fit for the task ahead of you for that day. You could be really unfit, but you could be in a brilliant position to do that job that day. Yeah. Take you for a run, you'll be awful. But you are going to be the best bosun, best chief officer to do that job that day. Yeah. That's actually what matters for that. That is the most important thing. Now, of course, there's lots of things you can improve on as well in terms of your cardiovascular fitness. But I think as we move forward, I think those conversations are going to be much, much easier. There's a lot of those kind of tech entrepreneurs coming in when they're building their yachts. We are seeing an emergence of giving up more space to crew. I'm talking to a lot of kind of interior designers at the moment that are really keen to speak to us about that creative space, about what can we do to kind of allocate that bit more space to a crew, as opposed to just a crew mess and maybe a little lounge that's appends that. It's about what more can we do. We're working with a yacht at the moment that's got 3 gyms on board. You've got an owner gym, guest gym, crew gym, and that's brilliant, because then you've got a dedicated area for that crew to be able to use. They may also be able to use the guest gym at times as well, because they've got obviously a particularly large crew complement. But I get very excited about that sort of discussion, because people are really thinking about how do I look after these crew? If I put my owner hat on, and unfortunately I doubt I'll get to that stage in life, and the Superyacht Fitness goes really well, and you never know. But I want to see the same faces. If I like those faces, if you're running a corporation, you want to see those same faces. You want to know that your CFO comes in every day, and your CMO comes in every day, and your technical officer comes in every day, because they love their work, because they're looked after. It's no different to a yacht. Yeah, it's no different to a yacht. You look at a lot of the big corporates, the Googles, the Salesforce of this world. I had an opportunity to go to the Googleplex when I was younger. It's such an inspiring place to work. Genuine. You go around on segways. You've always got a fully stocked kitchen, right? You've got beach volleyball courts in the Googleplex. People love working there. Yeah. So their retention rate is really, really high. It's just the same. It's just exactly the same, except you have to be a bit more creative, because you're on a 70-meter yacht, and you don't have the benefit of huge amounts of space. Still got to look after your people, and that doesn't just mean, because if you keep paying them more, at some point that bubble has to burst. Yeah, you can't keep going like that. It's like anything, right? So there's definitely some really exciting times ahead. I don't think whilst it gets a bit exhausting on the wellness side, and you keep hearing everyone doing it, that bubble won't burst in terms of looking after. It might just be called something different. So what would your response be to those people who say to me, well, Kaylee, we don't need to talk about fitness crew, because, they're never sat down, they're constantly moving, they are fit because they're working on board a vessel. What would your response be to them? Open your mind. Can you honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say, you don't need to do anything else for them? Because there's, let's say there's 10 different forms of fitness. You're just addressing one. You're just looking at one. When we're onboarding clients, the one thing I say to all of our clients is it's really important that we get, for example, the Superyacht Fitness app to everybody, because at that point, at least you're giving them the opportunity to go and talk to the right people. Yeah. Don't withhold that opportunity. Esther, our recruitment team leader, always used no crew, no crews. Invest in them from the beginning. The most important asset, 100% the most important asset. And I don't care who kind of begs to differ on that. To me, there's no better feeling if you're the owner of a yacht waking up to see crew members smiling. That is a real buzz. From a management perspective myself, a team is smiling. That just makes you feel good. It's no different when you're a yacht owner. It really isn't.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking to me today.
It's been a real pleasure. And I think this podcast, Wavelength, it's got a big future ahead with you running it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
See you.